The rise of Africa. The rise of Africa, the continent, the diaspora, and BRICS, explores the relationships that are affecting the global economy right now. This book explores the relationships of the African diaspora's influence on the African continent and why this is important in stabilizing relationships with an understanding of how BRICS impacts the future, good or bad. You can order your copy of The Rise of Africa today on Amazon.com. Neodiplomacy is the new currency. Neodiplomacy is the new currency. The reason that I can say that is you have a couple of different factors occurring right now as we speak on the world stage. The dollar is being disrupted. Nations are no longer wanting to engage with the United States. But the third factor that affects each and every one of us is that there is a diaspora from the African continent that's willing and able to engage our brothers and sisters on the continent.
All right. Shalom. Salama. Siyemi. Shalom. Greetings to all my Israelite brothers and sisters from around the world. Whether you're the bloodline of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the house of Israel, or you're Gentile grafted in to the house under the blood of Yahusha HaMashiach. I welcome you all this morning. I welcome you. Thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for subscribing. I'm looking at my iShow Speed Africa workshop. And, you know, I got to get my likes up. I got to get my subscribers up. I need to get those million subscribers. I'll race ya, iShow Speed. I'll race ya. Subscribe so I can do some backflips. Maybe 20 years ago. Now that is it is very fantastic to see what our young brother is doing on out there. It's actually fantastic to see our young men and women, our sons and daughters, positively reacting to the continent. What a blessing. I used to say this to even my kids. Yeah, I'm going to the continent. What? Huh? Until I showed pictures. And I was like, oh, wow. Oh. My son plays soccer. He likes to play soccer. He was actually offered a position to play soccer in Belize. Belize. He said, "Dad, I'm not doing that." My son is picky. And I said, $50 a month. It may seem, yeah, but you never know in Belize how you may be living life. You may not have a shower head that acts, or a shower, or plumbing, or anything that works, but I said it'll harden you up. It'll make you a man. Man, I was looking at Speed and all the young ladies that they're fighting. And to be quite honest, I'm just going to let you know, at 20 years old, and to see all of that, that would be, my 20-year-old mind would not be able to take that. That would be too much. I mean, he had Miss Zimbabwe, a Miss Universe contestant. I could guarantee you, behind the scenes, they were literally trying to make marriage contract arrangements for that brother. I could guarantee you he probably has at least 15 different, he'll have at least 15 different citizenships when he comes back home, or when he comes back to US. I would say honestly he's already home. But the reason I'm talking about that is because honestly, I'm trying to get my algorithm up. I'm trying to get I show speed, like, share, subscribe. No, I'm not. I go through those little types of different anecdotes because, to be quite honest, this is going to be this broadcast, this live stream is going to be shorter, but it's going to be very, very impactful. And shorter is because I have early morning meetings, so that's the only issue on my Tuesday. But I want to touch on some very, very interesting facts, especially when we're looking at what's going on in uh, all around the world. And as I had stated a few weeks ago, uh, there are there are different things happening that has really exposed the U.S. And there are reactions that happen, especially when you are seeing war brought over into really this hemisphere. And I know that there are different things because the reality is we look at things outside of the Western Hemisphere, particularly outside the United States, because why? It doesn't affect us. But now that it's coming close to home, there's an impact. There are things being affected. I work at a school here in the Tampa Bay area. I'm here in Tampa. I tell people that. Tampa is actually a very, very critical component to what's going on in the world and how wars are fought in the Middle East and Central Asia. They call it the CENTCOM, the United States Central Command area. I had worked at CENTCOM and within the Central Command area. Oh boy, for over 15 years of my military career. Over 15 years. 10 of those years being on active duty. About 11, 12. 11, 12. I had deployed to that area many times. Did exercises in that area many times. And I was one of those oddballs that would give my 2 cents in terms of analysis. And I'm saying, hey, you're going to have this, this, and this. That will never happen. And there were some strong objections. It will never happen. I worked in the conventional side and I worked on the special operations side. I'm not here to go through all the profile. I don't make any bones about it. Folks can see my LinkedIn. I'm not hiding. I don't think I say anything too controversial because what used to be controversial back then is honestly they got exposed and it's not so controversial anymore. Have you all noticed that? Oh man, 4 or 5 years ago, oh, shocker. Right now it's that's bland. Okay. Not a big deal. Okay. It is what it is. Okay. So going back to this, the reason I bring up even my military career is because honestly, back when I first became an intel officer, I went to a place called Fort Huachuca. And at Fort Huachuca, I would if for those that know or may not know me, I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd. And that's to me, that's okay. Now, I was always that nerd that was very athletic. I like to do smart or sports, but I also like to challenge people on their thoughts because I was also one of those people that like to get under people's skin, especially white people's skin, without letting white people know that I was getting under their skin. Know what I mean, Byron? Because I'd always like to challenge narratives Because back then, that was okay because you didn't really have any power. Right now, that's not okay because it shows that there's a lack of power because now the narrative has changed. And then the exposure of that narrative changing is a loss of power, and a loss of power within the Caucasian community. That's as good as a threat, right? The loss of power has sparked, I'm in fear of my life. The loss of power has reflected, I'm calling the cops because I'm in fear of you, or some other things that we would say that's just plain crazy. What's crazy for us is actually the norm for them, because the literal global power dynamic has shifted. I'm going somewhere with this in my short time. So the start of my intelligence career was satellites. People talk about intel. Satellites. I was a satellite guy. Geography. I love geography. I'm a geopolitical. So all these geopolitical folks and everybody else that comes on in here and gives their blah 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 2 cents. Well, I was that guy on the ground. I was that guy. I love to be around the natives talking to them because I'd like to get the on the ground perspective, and then I like to get the high level perspectives, the strategies, the campaigns. 100 push-ups. I'll take on that challenge. 10,000 so I can do 100 push-ups. I'll take on that challenge. There's going to be a caveat with them push-ups. It's going to be 100 push-ups in a 24-hour period. I can do it. I'd have to do a conference Zoom workout with our brother Garth. It'll take me. I would say probably take me about two months. I'm not that terribly out of shape. It's just to confidently do that in, like, maybe 2-3 minutes. But going back to my military career, I liked satellites. I was a satellite person. Um, Battle damage assessment, targeting, C4 ISR, C5 ISR, whatever they have right now. Everything is always changing, everything's always adapting, and everything's always evolving. I used to say, we worked in the secret squirrel rooms where you don't really get the light because it had to be dark so you can actually see the images. So you can see what was struck, how it was struck. So you can see what the actual arming that needed to have to provide for the bombardiers. Okay, does that ordinance work, or what ordinance do we need, and what's this and what's that? What assets you had available, or what assets would actually be a strategic or national asset? You just don't get everything that you want in theater. You actually have to do things, and you have to schedule things so you can see and get the products that you want to see. It then depends on what those products and how those products lived, the sensitivities of those products, and you had to make sure that you had the right clearances, and then you had to scrub those clearances or scrub everything down so it could be passed along. Did my time as a foreign disclosure officer. But the reality was In terms of what I have recognized, when people say, "Well, why do you believe in a flat Earth?" And to be honest, it actually makes the most sense when you think about everything. When you literally think about the pass bys. Now, I think to me, just in my opinion, I believe satellites are a little different than what they obviously portray it. I believe the reality of the geosynchronous orbits and things of that nature is a little different. Depends on the actual altitude, but we can go on and on with that discussion. But to bring it back to right now, what I did in my school as the extracurriculars and things of that nature was called the Van Diemen Award, and I was all about awards. I was a glory hound. I was chasing for it. Oh, okay, I could do this, I could do that. Oh, I could just do this. Oh, a 20-page academic paper. Okay. I did about 22, 23 pages. And they're like, hey, Lieutenant Copeland, you need to kind of slow it down. I said, but I can keep going and I would always have rivalries with other folks, and it was always healthy rivalries because you needed to have a rival. I had folks at that time. I was in my MBA and people were working on their doctorates. And, I actually had a break when I was doing my MBA to go to the Basic Officers Leadership course, Bullock. And part of my paper, it was on satellite imaging or imagery and the types of satellites and types of imagery that can be produced. Now, what was interesting was, again, as I had progressed through, there had been a rapid advancement in satellite technology that was being provided on the commercial spaces, i.e., when QTWA had first formed, we were talking about comms and communication. Red and I, we were having that discussion with our other folks. Hey, when folks are out there, well, I was talking about this. Hey, what about satellite phones and things of that nature? In the event, and that mess was expensive back then. To have a satellite kit was about $2,500. You knew I was going, Pastor Rick Fletcher. He said NASA is the largest consumer of helium worldwide. Oh boy. The reason I'm bringing all this up and I brought in this article is this. You are now seeing a lot of things taking place. And let me tell you, when you're dealing with war and warfare, you're dealing with assets that may not necessarily be native. And I would say that with a careful grain of salt. It may not be native to either that country, that region. It all depends. And the reality is actually this. When you see what happened in Iran, and I have to talk to this because I don't know if because I know people don't really appreciate what has actually happened. And there's a lot of different connotations that's going to occur. And I want to piece all this together. It's going to take me probably a couple days. So you can see how this weekend is actually going to shape up. So bear with me now. Okay, so again, we have a lot of different things going on worldwide. We have Venezuela. Now they're going to try to go after Cuba, right? President Marco Rubio for Cuba. Boy, oh boy. The Viceroy. I think that's all I can think of is like Star Trek. The Viceroy of the Empire. The Empire is literally striking back. What brought this to mind was again, um, I don't work that far from MacDill Air Force Base. That's where CENTCOM, United States Central Command, and SOCOM is housed. These are top. These are the two top areas that's literally controlling everything that you see in the Middle East and everything that you see that's happening with these interdictions, these maritime vessel interdictions. So when aircraft is so just to give you all a quick hint, especially if you live near a military base that flies aircraft, there are two different times of the month that aircraft are flown: at the beginning of the month and at the end of the month. If you fly aircraft right now, people don't like to fly aircraft right now because if you fly it right now, you actually won't get paid until March. If you flew it at the beginning of the month, you'd actually get paid February 1st before the pay cycle goes for DFAS. Those are your training dates. Anything else, they're not training. Anything else are actually mission oriented. And honestly, the location, the altitude also is a very determinant factor. So when and I can kind of tell being on MacDill and having worked on MacDill for almost 15, 16 years, I can get I know what different airplanes sound like. And I would say military aircraft. And yesterday, the aircraft, it was flying low in my area, so much so that even the students were like, wow. When it starts to disturb, teenagers, 13, 14-year olds, that becomes a big deal. And I had noticed because it wasn't just one time, it was about 3 or 4 times. And I realized it said what they're doing is they're scanning the area. They're scanning the area to see if there are different signals on out there that should not be emanating. Yes, family. Let me get you into into the technology sphere. Signals are waves of energy. When you have that little energy thing and you see the little waves and then the waves will get taller and shallower. Well, those are frequencies, and those frequencies determine the type of messaging that can then be placed on those frames of energy without getting too ultra complicated up here. There are frequencies that we're allowed to utilize. They're called commercial frequencies. There are frequencies that the US is allowed to utilize, and then there's actually frequencies that go beyond the US. There's a lot. Frequencies will be short term, short range, and frequencies that would be long range that can scale the entire Earth because the amount of energy. Now, here's the reality: you can actually monitor and scan for those frequencies because each frequency emits energy, and energy can actually be traced back. It can be triangulated back. That's why when you see and understand how these things operate without going to, I'm trying to keep this as unclass as possible. You see a lot of it in, I'm going to tell you, like Mission Impossible. They give you kind of the topical type thing, you know. They're in the van, right? They're in the van, and in the van they have some really high powered, you know, energy source as they're moving about the city. Well, what are they trying to do? They're trying to avoid triangulation. That's actually a real thing. The only way that you can actually defeat something like that is what Iran just did. Let me go to this article. It's Reuters. Iranians tap Musk's Starlink to skirt internet blackout, sources say. So they did that. Some Iranians are still using Elon Musk's Starlink satellite internet service despite a nationwide communication blackout. Three people inside the country said the latest example of Starlink being used to counter internet shutdowns and geopolitical flashpoints. Iranian authorities have recently launched a deadly crackdown on nationwide protests, including the near complete shutdown of internet service. Now, here's the reality. That was beforehand, and that's on Reuters. Understand there's different government linked propaganda machines when it comes to media. That's why not all media, look, there's media and not all media is free media. There are stories that will be told for whatever purpose of whatever government entity that's assigned that story. I'll keep it like that. So when people say it's a free and fair media, no, it's not. It hasn't been free and it hasn't been fair for quite a while. But I'm going somewhere with this. So the reality was this, because then you start to see reports of then Iran shutting down kill switch. I'm going to go here into Forbes. It's probably a pay, so bear with me. And you can see that right here because this is all in the world of, it is all in the world of cybersecurity. This was as of yesterday, 4:54 Eastern. Kill switch. Iran. Let me put this in the chat. Sorry, family. Because a lot of things are going on here, and you may miss it because they're not going to tell you really how this works. So, kill switch. Iran shuts down Starlink internet for first time. They shut down Starlink internet. They're shutting down this is satellite communication. Now you understand that there's a panic because people said, well, you really can't shut down satellite communication. But now they're doing this. This is from Forbes. I'm showing you this right now. This is from Forbes. We have not seen this before. Iran's digital blackout has now deployed military jammers reportedly supplied by Russia to shut down internet access to Starlink internet. This is a game changer for the Plan B connectivity frequently used by protesters and anti-regime activists when ordinary access to the internet is stopped. Despite reports that tens of thousands of Starlink units are operating inside Iran, says Iran Wire, the blackout also reached satellite connections. It is reported that about 30% of Starlink's uplinks and down traffic was initially disrupted, quickly rising to more than 80% within hours. They're shutting things down. So, what do you think that does for, let's just put this on out there. What do you think that does for special operations and other covert assets on the ground in the country? They're flying blind. The reality is this: Iran didn't just get that from their own making. That was either supplied by Russia or China. More than likely, Russia. That was a field test. Because understand, now, this is also the case. The U.S. also does have microwave emitters, microwave jammers. But one of the things that was being said in the Maduro operation was that they were saying that they had used some sort of supersonic weapons or hypersonic weapons, i.e., high velocity frequencies. That was causing people to die. I don't know if how graphic it was, if people's hearts were exploding and blah blah blah. I'm not. I don't know too much about that. But now you're starting to see a whole bunch of things going on because now you're starting to get towards the end when the non-conventional weaponry is being deployed. That was a non-conventional weapon that had disrupted and defeated communications. That was an offensive weapon. And if people don't understand that, that actually blocked communications for the United States government. That's also an act of war. So now, if you're blind on the ground, and now that you have an adversary that has the ability to jam signals, then guess what? Now they got to strike. And not only do they have to strike, now they have to question what other technologies do they have that Russia has. There's a different calculus that Russia has provided or China has provided for them. There's a different calculus on this. What can they do in terms of potential jamming of different military aircraft? They've done that before in the Strait of Hormuz. That takes power. But to do it on the scale of a country, that's a whole lot of power. And let me tell you, you're exposing a population to a whole lot of energy. And what that actually is, believe it or not, Technically speaking, when you're exposing someone to a high environment of energy, what is that called? Starts with an R. It's actually radiation. So now you're going to understand that, who got exposed? This is really your worst case scenario because now this provides the pretext. Hey, you want to shut that on down? Guess what? It's going to emit radiation. You really don't care about your country, so now we got to bomb you. Now we're coming in. Understand, I look at it like this. The pretext was they were always going to strike. They were always going to strike around this time because let's now do another deep dive. Only got a few more minutes before I got to get rolling. Now let's start to understand, when did the U.S. first strike Iran? What was that holiday that has been endeared, especially by so-called African Americans? It was Juneteenth. I remember that because I was talking, and I think we're talking to Garth and some other folks, and I said, "Man, they can't even leave our holidays alone anymore." Do you all see the setup? Do not be surprised that they now have about another. They're going to have about a 48-hour window, 48 to 72-hour window, because they're going to bring up this pretext. I don't know if this is the first one, if I'm the only one that said it right now, but I definitely won't be the last. I know how those folks are. They listen and you know, they'll bite off of this. Everything they do. Oh, they look. They got to disrupt black folks. They didn't want to. They didn't want to protest. We got to mess with Juneteenth. They still don't want to protest. Well, we're going to now mess with MLK. This is real. This is how this goes. Now, when you're seeing how this access works, when you're seeing how this alignment works, we haven't even touched on Greenland. Shout out to Paul from Off Grid Desert Farming. Listen, folks, Paul actually had a really good analysis the other day. And I said, and I had to give the kudos. So that's actually a really good analysis. Oh, he's back on YouTube. His account had been suspended because Paul was going way too hard. Paul was looking like that one white pastor up in Jamal Bryant's church, giving his own people the business. And it was actually, and it was very poignant. He said, "Listen, Greenland." He said, "I think that that's a smokescreen because now you're bringing NATO an excuse to get into Greenland, instead of it being directed at the United States, the or Russia, excuse me, it's being directed at the United States. Which to me, that yeah, that's actually pretty masterful. Dang, okay, well, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll wow, okay. So I was trying to keep this as unclassified as possible because it could delve into a whole lot of ranging things because of the types of energy that would be used, the amount of frequencies that would be utilized, and also different tactics that are done because, when they said now, oh, well, guess what? They can scan an entire neighborhood. Well, yes, they can. They absolutely can. They can refurbish vehicles to do that. I've seen it done. Matter of fact, I was in a class showcasing that here in the Tampa Bay area. And I was taking some of the foreign military folks to see this class, and they had to scrub the class down a little bit. And then I went a couple weeks later just so I could actually audit the class, so I could see, like the everything. I was always curious. Now I got to see everything. I want to see everything. And I'm like, oh, okay. So if they wanted to get you, they can get you. That's why I said, family. If I, my aim is to be on here every day, most high willing. But if I don't, then I went over the line. There is a line. It's not an imaginary line, it's a real line. That's why I have to bring things on into the perspective because I can't say anything until it's really weird. It's a really slippery slope. When people are at the desperation point, then they tell. And again, it's not what we say, it's literally their actions. That's honestly, that's the reality to this. That is the absolute reality. Suffice to say. So I'm not giving any dates, but I do want us to see how these timelines are literally working. Because if you don't see the pattern, then you're going to be subjected to, a whole bunch of crazy if you don't understand the pattern. And again, that's not good for anybody. It's really not. So if you like what we do at this channel, you can like, share, subscribe. Come on, chat. Come on, chat. Hey, you know what? I am not gonna knock I Show Speed's hustle. Again, my channel was never designed for, all of the stuff. I don't do the antics. But what I do is I do reach on out to our brothers and sisters on the continent, and this is a blessing to see that our people are reaching on out and they're showing that outreach, because that's amazing to see what's happening. But as that's going on, remember what's happening here in the background, because that's the truth too. That's what's going on. That's what's happening. They're really trying to create the conditions of war. And this build up, this is an unprecedented build up. Have you noticed? It's just now building and building and building and building. And it's like it's a coordinated effort to pop the balloon. Basically, it's a coordinated effort, and the effort's coordinated not on one or two. Not on one part. It's a global coordination of, okay, let's bring everybody in, and now we're going to quote unquote fight. Kind of interesting, but that's what the word says. So people know they're going to fight, and then that fight provides legitimacy in the transfer of power. But they also understand that's also legitimacy in the transfer of us going home. That is the end of our captivity. There's an end. There's an end that's going to be marked. And for them, it's going to be a violent end. I mean, that's what the word says. Now, Yahoo was in control, and we need to be walking covered under the blood of Yahushua HaMashiach. So, saints, we just have to endure until the end of this captivity. And with that being said, Most High willing, I'll be back tomorrow unless they pull on up and I get disappeared. I'm just praying that doesn't happen. I think they got bigger fish to fry. But I pray that you all be blessed in these times of uncertainty. And with that said, family, shalom, salama, siemi, shalom, peace and blessings, Yasharel.